A lot of my work is anti-capitalist in nature, and so finding companies that are like down for that is really hard. Um, and
I
so
don't
I was
know.
like,
Lovesac has its anti-capitalist tendencies. We'll talk.
well, hey, I'm totally happy to chat with you.
Welcome to the Let Me Save You 25 Years podcast. I am your host, Shawn D. Nelson, sometimes known as the Lovesac guy. I wrote a cool book called Let Me Save You 25 Years, where a bunch of these Shawnisms we unpack come from. Today's topic, episode 32, Try Everything. I get to unpack this with artist, activist, world record holder, Benjamin Von Wong. You're going to love this. We talk about finding ways to make our daily grind fun, what makes life worth it, how to pursue big things, understanding how you work, what makes you tick, what's your personal why, your purpose, how to get there, what is your metric for a year well lived. We'll get to Benjamin's own personal mantra, I deserve enough to thrive. All of this on today's pod. I think you're going to love it. Any human being interested in doing more than working a 9 to 5 and passing the time away is going to love this discussion with Benjamin Von Wong. Check it out. So good to have on the pod today an artist, an activist, photographer, designer, mining engineer. What the heck? Benjamin Von Wong. On Let Me Save You 25 Years. Good to be with you, Ben.
Good to be here. Good to be here.
Yeah. I mean, who better to unpack this idea of try everything than a man who seems to have already done that so far in his life. So I gotta ask you, Benjamin, when you first heard this topic, I don't know, what's the first thing that came to mind without thinking too hard?
Try everything. I mean, I felt like it was the most appropriate kind of slogan or theme that you had put in front for me to pick from, because when I look at my life and where I'm at today, I don't think it's something I could have ever planned for. Going from hard rock mining engineer to environmental activist, creating large scale art installations, like, where is the sense in that? And I think you only get there by trying a whole bunch of things. Some of them working spectacularly, and a bunch of them failing. But yeah, I think I learned pretty early on that nobody remembers your failures. They really remember your successes, because if things are failing, or, I mean, I guess there are the rare moments where you fail spectacularly publicly and it eclipses everything else. But
I don't know. I think my wife remembers plenty of my failures, but
oh,
outside of that, no, I love what you're saying. I think you have a great point, right? Things fail. They unless they are tragic and bombastic, they typically end up in the dustbin, but your big wins
yeah.
can live on forever. And you've had a bunch of those. So let's back up for 1 second. Let's start here. You began, I love this, as a mining engineer and very quickly made a massive pivot. And now your life is just on a completely different track. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. I mean, when I was young, I started university around 17 years old. I didn't really know what I want to do. I don't think anyone knows what they want to do when they're 17 years old. And the mining folks had the best sales pitch. They said I would travel, I would have the best salary, I would have work terms. And I was like, oh yeah, well, that sounds great. Let's do it. But really, I think things got interesting on evenings and weekends, where I picked up a camera and I started to realize that with a camera, you could go anywhere. You could go places you were never invited to. You could go backstage. You could flag a beautiful person down and say, hey, I'd love to take your photo. I mean, like, it was like sort of a key to everything.
Wow.
And 3.5 years into my career, I woke up one morning and I was like, oh man, I'm bored. I don't know what I want to do in life, but I know what I don't want to do. And so let's just get out there and see what's up. And I quit my day job. I was originally going to get an MBA, but I quit at the wrong time of the year. And so there was really nothing for me to do. And so I just started traveling. I ran my first Kickstarter campaign. I got people to pay for my travels. I raised $10,000.
On what premise?
I basically said I was going to create tutorials and content, and I would document this entire adventure and just show people whether or not I could live my dreams, live my passions. And, went around and started doing all sorts of like that really catalyzed a bunch of like early day, like really fun stunts, like trying to do things like this, tying a model
Mm.
30 meters underwater in a shipwreck in Bali. And, like I'm producing this photo shoot without a dive license. So I only got my dive certification the day before the photo shoot. I just assumed it was going to work
No
out.
way.
Yeah. Or like, collaborating with really epic artists, and their Burning Man outfits, trying to find unique and interesting ways of taking photos. And so I was just doing all sorts of these like creative projects earlier on, uh, and finding that, following the signals. People, this was right at the time of clickbait. And if you were doing something that was attracting attention, people were loving it. There was, I think, a little less noise. YouTube and all that influencer stuff was still new. And I kind of rode that wave to the best of my ability.
That's so cool. Yeah. I mean, just these visuals you've created as you hold up these postcards. It's so cool to have these mementos of your work. And of course, in some cases, the installations themselves live on. And that's really, I think, as I've observed, where you've carved a niche, making these big. I mean, I made an 8-foot beanbag. People paid attention. You don't see it every day. And you made a 2.5-story pile of garbage. And
Yeah. Yeah. I've done many things since then. I mean, I think photography taught me one really important skill. I think it's the art of collaboration, right? Like if you're going to be creating these photographs that are really heavily produced, you need to have a great team behind you. And it's almost like a shortcut, because photographer is like the final step of the puzzle before something can get shared. And so if you bring the right people together, and you help them believe in trying to do something that they had never thought of doing or could not do alone, by bringing the right people together or helping them unlock a space or some resources or an opportunity, then you can actually end up creating really fantastical things. And so when I was transitioning from doing photography to doing art installations, I kept that same idea. We sometimes look at these projects and we're like, oh, like these are so big. Like, how did you build this 2.5-story tall faucet with plastic spewing out of it? Or how did you build this like art installation out of 168,000 plastic straws? It must be so difficult. But like, it is hard. And I think it only works because you're doing something hard. Because if
mm,
you're doing something that was less ambitious, it would be so much less attractive to people. Like
yeah.
it's because it's hard that it's rare, and it's because it's rare that it's ambitious, and because it's like people want to get involved in things that are bigger than themselves. And if you can get the confidence to like ask people, knowing that you're not exactly sure if it's going to work, and bring them along for that journey, I think you'll find like you'll be really surprised at who shows up.
Okay. So this is perfect. Another one of my Shawnisms literally reads, see who shows up. And
Oh
I
yeah.
think as you described this, I felt something very similar so Lovesack was my side hustle in college. And it only became that because, again, I made a big beanbag. Everywhere I went, people were like, oh my gosh, like, what is that? Like, where did you get that? Before you know, people want to buy it. And then their friends wanted to buy one. And so I couldn't really keep up as I was going to school and waiting tables for money at night. This thing wasn't going to make me any money. It just, young businesses take a lot of money, as I'm sure your exploits took a lot of money in the beginning. You had to fly yourself around the world or get your hands on materials or get scuba certified. But as I found, and as you found, if you're doing something even mildly remarkable, people want to be a part of it. And that's a phenomenon that can and should be leveraged. It's not, I didn't try to take advantage of anyone per se. I just, let people know like, yeah, I'm going to be stuffing sacks tomorrow. If you want to show up, come down. It's a lot of, and I was shocked at how many people would just show up. I mean, and volunteer their time. Eventually I, could pay people, but in the
You pay
beginning,
people and beers.
totally, or whatever. I mean, I remember, and in the spirit of try everything, we didn't know how to sell giant bean bags. There's no handbook for that. And so we were doing we would buy little 10 by 10 booths. It started, look, at the college campus, we had a 10 by 10 booth at our May Fest, like the annual sort of like college campus, like, I don't know, outdoor get together thing. And then, okay, well, where else can we do that? And before long, we had a 10 by 10 booth at the Beer Fest, Oktoberfest, boat shows, home shows, Christmas conventions, car shows, and some were better than others. But the point was, we tried everything. And I couldn't even man those booths all the time because I was busy, working a day job or going to school. And so some of my friends that showed up would sometimes cover, and they just, and I think there's power in that. And by the way, some of those are still my closest friends today. So I think like you said, if we are willing to take upon ambitious things and go for stuff, it's amazing the kind of support we can get.
Absolutely. And like, I'm curious, like, how has that earlier success carried on to like today? Do you still, I don't know, in your job applications on like Indeed or wherever you hire people from, do you say like, come up with your own job title, or like are you still applying that in like a modern day publicly traded company context? How does it work?
That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, Lovesac has come so far. Now we're this. Now we're the man, right? We're the big company, the public company. At the same time, we're trying to stay small. I think the way that I'm still doing that today. Excuse me. I have amazing teams of professionals. We get to hire now from the most accomplished, highest earning, most capable pools of people on earth. These are people that have worked for the biggest brands you can think of to fill specific roles, and they're all better than me at what they do. But none of them are me, and I still have my value. What I do, I found, is besides my day job of being CEO and whatever, I don't always put each one of my wild ideas through the Lovesac machine, where it'll get whittled down and committed down to some, watered down version of itself. For my strongest provocations, my instincts, I'll go right to an outside designer or someone to work with, or some kind of partner. And in some cases, my suppliers. I'll be like, hey, I want to do this. Will you help me? And of course, they'll help me. And I do these things kind of like in my own little bubble to see if I can make big things happen, and get some traction before I put it through the machine. And again, I find that even though each one of these constituencies, let's say our suppliers, have a day job as well, and other customers, they're so excited to work with me on these side projects that, by the way, can eventually become the main project. And so I think that just trying everything, like people ask me all the time, here's another example of it. Shawn, Lovesac looks like a cool place to work. I see all your posts on LinkedIn, blah, 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 blah. How do I create a good culture like that? And my answer to them, it sounds so dumb, but I say, just do things. And what I mean by that is you or I, every human has ideas that come to their mind. And they're like, hey, we should really have a get together on Fridays doing this or that. We should really do. And the problem is that they remain just ideas. Where, to your point, even as we were chatting earlier, these ideas you have over a beer, or after the camera turns off and we're just shooting the breeze, those can often be the big ideas. But you have to take action. It's like, you know what? Let's go to Belize. Let's go. Let's go down there and just see what, I've heard that there's this something, and so just do things as you have ideas to develop a culture, as you have ideas to maybe do some really off the wall PR stunt or product. Even take some action. I mean, that's what started Lovesac. I made an 8-foot beanbag, and people were like, "Oh my gosh, that's wild!" And bam, 26 years later, it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, in real life, we need to have hobbies. I think hobbies enable us to play and experiment in a safe way. They enable us to explore things that we're curious about. And I guess what you're speaking to is that in the professional world, we need to do the same. We need to find ways of cultivating those opportunities for play and exploration that are outside of what's expected. And so it breaks the norm. It helps you reset your mind and look at things in a different way. And it it helps to nurture human connection that then creates the environment and the conditions for great things to flourish. So
Yeah,
yeah.
you said something that reminded me of a moment where we were trying to solve an engineering problem, like a connection thing. And it was my experience wakeboarding, and being exposed to wakeboard bindings and even snowboard bindings that gave me, hey, why don't we try it this way? And I feel like had I not had so many hobbies, and I've never been great at any of these things. I'm not a great wakeboarder, snowboarder, dirt biker. And dirt biking does the same thing. You get exposed to all kinds of new mechanics, new ideas, new ways of, exploring the world. And these things overlap to business, to product design, to PR, to promotions, marketing. And so I guess that's why I promote this topic, try everything. But I
Mhm.
will say, as a caveat, I'm not saying to continue to do everything. There's a difference between trying everything, but there's only so much time in your life, time on earth, time as a earner, business person, all of that. And so you do have to be economical and make decisions on the things that persist.
Yeah, I do feel like there's not a lot of literature on that. Like when is a good time to like let go, right? When do you know that an idea is not good enough? Because we have so many stories of perseverance, like, oh, you
Yeah.
just got to grit your teeth and push through and everything. But like sometimes you just got to let go of dumb ideas. Sometimes you just got to read the writing on the wall and see like, oh, this is something that I'm exclusively pushing forward, but no one else is really excited about. And I think that getting really good at balancing both, I think it's like this delicate dance between believing in a vision that only you can truly see and knowing when is the right time to give up or push or pull. It's like it's really a dance. And when you can get good at that, when you can start, I think maybe this is something that evolves over time as you start trusting your own intuition. You get sort of like, it's almost like when you're off balance or in balance, but like it would be really hard to describe it in words as you're like walking down a balance beam, for example. I feel like there's constantly this dance between coming up with new things, believing in that, and then also being able to let them go so that new interesting things can have the space to breathe and be explored.
Yeah. Yeah. You brought up something that occurs a lot on this podcast in different contexts. That's important. I believe it's of the utmost important it's of the utmost importance. And that is intuition. Um, I believe that entrepreneurs, and not just entrepreneurs, doers, achievers, people, you know, doing things of consequence in the world have strong intuition. And we don't always listen to it, or it's tamped down by the professionals around us or the, way things are done. And then what's wild is the older I get, and I'm getting pretty old, not the more professional, more thought out, more organized I become in my thinking and planning and strategizing, but the more I begin to trust my intuition. And the times when my intuition's kind of flashing and I ignore it because, well, this or that data point speaks otherwise, I end up paying for it. And so it's like I've had that happen to me so many times that I've become more reliant on my intuition. And it's tricky because to your point, you can't just be blown from here to there everywhere all the time, or you'll never get anything done. You'll never progress. But learning the art of paying attention to your intuition, trusting it, and knowing when to heed it. And then you'll say, well, how is that done? It's kind of like balance. It's one of these topics that never ends. And I'll just say this. You can get better at deciphering, discerning. Not only that, but you need to, or you will be blown from here, there to everywhere. And finally, and this is a thing that I very much believe, this is why you're paid the big bucks. There's a huge reward, as you discover, Benjamin, for those willing to take risks. Like you no longer have to be a mining engineer, which probably was fine, but like you've landed in a different place in life that I think you're enjoying. And that's because
It,
you were willing to go for it, right? And that's a consequence of you following your intuition. So that's why you're paid the big bucks, and you can't be afraid of it. You have to be willing to take those risks and heed your intuition. And you're the CEO of your own life, as I like to say. And to me, that's why, that's why you're paid the big bucks. So metaphorically speaking, maybe literally, is where I'm coming from.
Well, I'm not sure if I'm getting paid the big bucks as you are getting paid the big bucks, but regardless, I do think that the piece specifically around designing a life that can help you create the conditions for which you can take risks, or that those around you are able to take risks, is the valuable thing. I think like sometimes we maybe just focus on the outcome or the reward that comes with whatever it's doing, but the thing that we spend most of our time doing is the journey itself. It's the process that we're kind of the grind that we're stuck in on a daily basis. And I think finding ways of making that fun and playful and interesting and exciting is what makes a life worth living, because that's what we spend most of our time doing.
And by the
um
way, that's what I
yeah.
mean by being paid the big bucks. Like you found a life that you feel is worth living, and it
Sure.
seems to me to be greatly satisfying to you. And if I think most people want that. Most people want what we just said. Forget the money, right? But in order to get that, I believe you have to be willing to follow your instincts if you have them, and you did that. How do you create those conditions where people can take risks, or even yourself can take risks?
So for myself, I think it was really truly understanding what makes me happy. Like how do I learn? How do I grow? Right. So as an example, like I don't learn by watching YouTube tutorials online. I need to go and do things with people. And so community is a really interesting and important aspect. The reason that I was able to grow my earlier career as a influencer and a photographer is because I'd found a community of people to co-create with. Right. And so this is actually one of the things that I'm looking for right now as I just moved to New York City are more creationships, not relationships, not friendships, but creationships, because I know that I become the best version of myself when I'm prototyping and co-creating. And I love being of service to others. This is something that's
Mm-hmm.
like just
That's good.
intuitively, like I love surrounding myself with people who are pursuing something larger than themselves, who are talented at what they do. And if I can get involved in whatever they're doing, I will learn something and I will grow from there. And so, having that, like those are just a couple ideas, but like basically understanding how you work, what makes you tick, and then once you do enter a space of leadership, and I don't know, like I don't have quarterly reviews, I don't have managers, I don't have a
You
portfolio to like really like tell me whether or not I'm doing the right thing, and so
don't want
I
them.
really, but I mean, I like to tell people anytime we do a project that like your job is not to make me happy. Like everyone is here to make the project the best it possibly can be. So if I am saying something that is stupid, you have to call me out on it, because you have to look at the bigger picture, and you are an expert at whatever it is you're doing, which is why you're part of the project, and you need to call things out and let me know, and then we can workshop it together. And if I'm not able to see it in the moment, like hold on to it, like keep at it, because like ultimately, um it is the sum of all of what, like it's the sum of our best attributes that we're trying to aspire for and aim for, right? You don't want the average, you want actually like the best of each and every person on that team to contribute in, so that you can create something that no single person could have done alone, but everyone in aggregate can actually build off of each other, and now you can do something that's absolutely spectacular. And so how do you get people to have permission, to not feel like they defer to you because you're the one paying the bills, or it's your vision or something along those lines?
Oh, that's huge. So here we are talking about, following your instincts, following your intuition. I'm promoting that. On the other hand,
Yeah.
my question to you, right, was how do you create the conditions where people can take risks? And you take it to this place where you need people to collaborate with you and even, go toe to toe with you to come to the best solutions for the project. Okay.
I mean, at the end of the day, there's one decision maker, right? So I will still move things forward in one way. Like at some point, you reach these points where you have a disagreement. Okay, here's a fun example. When I made this like 2.5 story tall Jenga art installation at the United Nations Biodiversity Conference, the initial concept was to have it look like it was falling down. So it was actually like it went up, and then it had like a 30-degree slant, and then it went up again. So it looked like it was like totally unstable and was like it should have been falling down.
Hmm.
And I was really married to this idea because I created maquettes. I had fundraised with that visual in my mind. I had already gone through the process of costing out and engineering how we would build that. And we had actually determined the height and size of this entire installation because of that shape. And I still remember a conversation with this guy who we were actually interpersonally having a lot of conflict. We still have a lot of conflict,
Yeah.
but he was just pushing really hard and he was saying like, I don't think this is the right idea. I don't
Wow.
think this is the right idea because when people imagine a Jenga tower, they imagine a tower that is basically looking like, it may look unstable, but it's actually still standing. It's not falling over. That
Yeah.
moment of it being unbalanced is actually only a fraction of a second. So no one has that ingrained in them.
Hmm.
And what you're doing right now actually looks more to me like an apartment building than anything else. And
Hmm.
we went back and forth for the longest time until one day, I just sat with it and I went like, you know what? I think the story that we're trying to tell here is that there's still a story of hope. So there's still time. And there's still time means that we need the tower to be salvageable. So we might want to add some twists. We might want to remove just enough blocks so that it looks uncomfortable, but we don't actually want it to reach that point. And then I had to just swallow my ego after all this fighting for an idea that I thought was the right one and go back to the entire team, like across the entire board, redesign the entire number of blocks, redesign ecosystems, everything, and just say like, all right, I think this is the right way. And that wasn't because it was my idea. It was because it was right for the story that we were designing. And
Yes.
we had to go through, I think, that testing of the concepts and the pushing and the pulling to tease it until it was finally ready.
Yeah. Perfect. This is what I want to double click on, because what you're describing in your management of your ego is one of the hardest things for people to deal with as they wrestle with their own ambitions or desires to do ambitious things, to do big things. And it's so cool to hear you articulate this, because of course you and I, and anyone, by the way, trying to do stuff, learn all the same lessons if you're teachable and if you're, in my opinion, truly going to have success. And this lesson you're describing, where we learn to put the outcome above the ego. And the problem with caricatures of leaders and caricatures of entrepreneurs or what have you, the Steve Jobs of the world, movies, Hollywood, is that it often portrays leaders and, the strong-willed coach, never give up, as just singular to their vision or whatever. But I've discovered in my own life that the most powerful leaders and those that have the most continued success, not just in one campaign or one game or one season, are those who can truly separate themselves from their ego, which we all have to have. We have to have an ego just to, put on a clever hat and some necklaces and go be an artist. I'm picking on you. Like, you have to play the part. You have to, you have to, and I don't mean that insincerely. What I mean is, like, we all have to have an ego just to wake up and go do big stuff. But on the other hand, our egos can destroy us. And so I love how you described this person that you allowed, you created that environment that we talked about, where they could challenge you, where you could argue it out. And this is one of the things just yesterday, I walk into the office, we're renaming a product, we're making some decisions on fabrics and design and different things. And there are multiple strings pulling on any decision. It's never just, well, which name do you like better, or which fabric is prettier? It's costs, it's shipping times, it's manufacturing, it's considerations, it's the whole, palette of other colors. There's multiple strings always pulling on every decision. And sometimes participants in the process only have a partial view, where perhaps in some cases I might have a more complete view. And I have to crush their point of view and say, no, we're going this way. I have to your point, make that decision. I have to be that decision maker. But the minute I have to do something like that, after we've argued it out, I remind them, please do not misunderstand me. I want you to argue with me on almost everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to do because I'm the CEO, and it's easy for people. If you win too many battles,
Yeah.
then people just acquiesce all the time. And then you'll never even know, what good they might have to offer the development of a product, a concept, an idea, a project, because you've crushed them down. and they're just there to collect a paycheck. And so there, you talk about doing a dance. There's this fine dance between being a decision maker, being decisive, moving forward, and allowing people to participate, and maintaining a team that's able to participate fully because they trust you to really hear their feedback. And every now and then, for things that just don't matter that much, I'll just go their way, even if I disagree. This happened as recently as this week. I like one outcome better than another myself. I can make the call. And I purposely allow someone to make the call because I know that, one, it doesn't really matter that much. And so for them to have a win keeps them engaged. And so they're there for me next time we want to go toe to toe on something, and they're not completely demoralized or down to just collecting a paycheck.
Yeah, that's definitely an important one, to make sure to, I mean, as an artist, maybe it's the same as a CEO. You're like birthing a new project, and so it's your baby, and you kind of need to let go of the things that don't matter. You need to let go of that little perfectionist, because if you were doing it, you would do it this way, but you
Mm-hmm.
actually won't be able to do it with a team. And so letting people have just enough autonomy for them to shine is probably the most important thing. I think one of the other things that I like to try is to make sure to explain the decision making process. So to validate their theories, but then explain why one thing, like why a decision would go the opposite direction, um, just so that they can actually understand. Maybe we can't agree on the final decision, but at least we can see toe to toe on like why the process, what the process is like, and how we got to that decision. But yeah, I mean, I think it's hard. Like, the world isn't like a video game, right? The world is a wicked place. You can make the wrong decision and get great results because you were in a favorable market, and you can make the perfect decision at the wrong time and be punished for it. And so you sometimes just don't know, man. Like, I think
Absolutely.
it's really hard to know whether or not you're doing the right thing. And for whatever reason, we tend to just assume that people that are in positions of power did everything right and know all the answers, but that's not always the case. I definitely don't think it's the case. I think we just probably get luckier than most because we're trying more and maybe working harder and having a certain amount of. There's always a certain amount of luck that's involved. I don't know.
I'll share a story to that end that stayed with me my whole life. So a lot of people know in my background, I won $1 million on national TV. I won
You
Richard
did?
Branson. Yeah, I won Richard Branson's reality TV show called The Rebel Billionaire. It was on Fox Network. It's kind of like meant it was Richard Branson wanting to have a show kind of like The Apprentice, but not for
Okay.
apprentices, for like entrepreneurs. So we all had our own businesses. We all competed, 12 episodes, eliminating people along the way, business challenges, of course, stunt
Congratulations.
challenges because it's Richard Branson. And anyway, at the end of the show, this is the fascinating part. So I win $1 million. I'm like their guy now. I'm like, and no one in the world knows this. I'm on Richard Branson's island. We're having a rap party. We've traveled the world together for 2 months. And all of a sudden the wall comes down where, the show's done filming. I'm now kind of Fox's, you know, winner, poster child. And I've got to start thinking about, when this thing airs, coming public with it, and then being carted around for PR and promotion, whatever. And I see the producers over there in a kind of a heated discussion during the rap party, and they're all huddled. And I'm like, what's going on? And I kind of go up, and now they're kind of like, they're no longer like keeping me at arm's length because I'm like a cast member of a reality TV show. They're allowing me to kind of listen in, and they were all nervous and discussing what to do because Mark Cuban's show, The Benefactor, had just aired and it was a failure by rating standards. And they were like, I don't know, these apprentice like shows may not work and maybe we need to pivot. And I watched these seasoned executives with hundreds of years of TV experience amongst them kind of change the whole premise of the show that we just filmed and tried to make
Wow.
it more like The Amazing Race, and tried basically use the same footage that we had filmed all over the world. But instead of it making it so much of a business show, making it more like The Amazing Race, which it was always going to be kind of a blend. Anyway, my point is nobody knows what they're doing. The CEOs, the producers, the executives, they're all guessing to some point, to some degree. And you are just another one of those. And we do get better at guessing, and we do get experience that informs our decision making. And I'm not trying to throw them under the bus saying, look, because by the way, the end result was, the punchline is, the Rebel Billionaire was never that popular. It didn't have crazy ratings. I think it could have if they had just stuck to the script and the program that they had originally designed it to be. It did fine, but it wasn't
Yeah.
like a smash hit. And I watched them kind of ruin their own piece of art because of their fear. And that's one thing that I have in my own morning mantra, is this line. These are things that I say to myself every day, these little affirmations, or whatever you want to call it. I have this morning mantra that I say to myself. Not a lot of people know this. And one of the lines in there is, I will not operate from a place of fear. And if I find myself making decisions coming from a place of fear instead of a place of, being solution oriented, being abundance oriented, whatever, I go a different direction. I refuse to operate from a place of fear, and it's served me well.
No, that's great. I mean, I think I went through my own little cycle of fear recently. Maybe 2 years ago, I was contemplating a career shift. I
Hmm.
was creating I'm creating these great projects. I just come off of creating this like installation for Greenpeace. It's a
Oh, that's
giant
cool.
12-foot skull made out of electronic waste with Bitcoin laser eyes to talk about the environmental impacts of Bitcoin mining. And I spent 6 months on bringing this project to life, pushing it through. And I was walking away with like, I don't know, $5,000
Hmm.
because I had put so much money back into the project to like make a video, make a doc, and I just kept pouring more time and resources into the whole thing because I just wanted it to be awesome. I did like multiple photo shoots around it, created a whole series and so forth. And I was like, what am I doing? I'm not getting paid very well. I'm not
Hmm.
entirely sure what the quantifiable impact is. Like, sure, it got millions of views here and there, and it triggered a ton of conversations in the crypto world around the environmental impacts of Bitcoin mining, and it was being used by Greenpeace and so forth. But I was like, I'm still not sure. Like, I can't measure what this thing is doing. And so like I'm not feeling necessarily fulfilled. I'm tired. The work doesn't feel like it's tangibly making a difference. Like, is this really like what is a career path? And so I think I was really much just like looking at the 2-3 year horizon line and just being like, I don't know if I'm building a viable career long term. Maybe
Yeah.
I should contemplate and switch it up. And that whole process of just being stuck in that place forced me to like kind of look inside and explore and see like, what am I actually after? Like, what am I trying to build? What would
Hmm.
be enough? And I think exploring this question of enoughness has been pretty central. Because we always talk about like, oh, I want more. Okay, cool, you want more, but like, but why? You want more, but why? What are you gonna do with more? And when is more enough? And then you start realizing that like most people can't answer the question. What is your personal metric as a human being? What is your personal metric for a year well lived? And if you don't know what is your metric, what are your metrics for a year well lived, then how do you know if you have enough to do it or not? Maybe you're already there. And I think for me, that exploration, so I started questioning like what are my core values? We do this for businesses, mission, vision, values, but do we do it
Yes.
for ourselves?
Yes.
And I think for me, core values, came up to like, oh, like curiosity and adventure. I love trying new things. I need to be in a place where I'm learning and growing. Change and transformation, inner change. I want to change my inner world, but I also want to change the outer world. I want to like make sure that I'm making a difference on people. And then kindness and authenticity. I want to do it in a kind way. I don't want to take advantage of people. I want to show up how I am and do these amazing things and have these awesome adventures. And so then I was like, okay, you put all these together. What is my metric for a year well lived? Well, for me, it's being able to do at least 4 unique and interesting art projects that are different from something that I've done in the past. Great. Okay, can I do that? Oh, actually, I've been doing that. I've been doing that for the last decade. So I have enough to do that. Do I have enough to like what do I like to do personally? Personally, I like to travel. I like to do these like week-long immersive experiences. The ability to say yes to things that are just really weird and outside of my wheelhouse.
Hmm.
And guess what? I can also do that. And I just kind of like I went from this place of feeling like I really just didn't have enough because there's always something bigger you can build
Yeah.
to feeling like actually that's not true. I have enough to keep doing all the things that I want to do. I just have to change my perspective around it. And if I feel like I don't have enough abundance on the financial side, then I need to make sure that I understand how much to ask for because I'm writing my own checks. I'm choosing how much money, how much budget is allocated for myself at the end of the project. And so I need to stop trying to save the world all the time, putting the world first. I need to start with myself, right? Put on your oxygen mask first before putting on others. But that requires understanding who you are and what you want and what you need, because it's so funny that we live in a world where we're trying to promote these ideas of sustainability, right? Saying like, oh, you need to build a sustainable business. We need to make sure we're not burning up the environment. Da, da. But like, what about my world? Like, is my job sustainable?
Yes.
And if I'm living in a world where I'm trying to make the world a better place, great. But like these installations keep needing to get bigger, more expensive, more impactful, more, then I'm applying the opposite principles of sustainability to my own life and career. I'm
Wow.
creating the conditions of infinite growth within my own life, the expectation of infinite growth. And that's like a recipe for disaster. It's like a recipe for unhappiness and unfulfillment, because you start pursuing all these other things, right?
That's right.
And so my mantra has been like, I deserve enough to thrive, right? I deserve having enough to thrive, and enough, and that enoughness can change over time, right? If I one day I had a family, enoughness, the definition of enoughness would change, and that is
Yes.
okay. But for now, based on my current metrics for this year, how am I doing? And I think that clarity of vision in your inner life, in your inner landscape, really helps you create the conditions for success to create your best work afterwards.
This is so perfect. What is your metric for a year well lived? What a great way to look at introspection. So I want to celebrate so many things that you just unpacked, and I'll try to build on that a little bit and summarize a little bit, because you said you deserve, as you've identified for yourself, we could call it a purpose statement, or we could call it some other kind of, mantra. As you said, I deserve enough to thrive. And in that, Benjamin, I think it is obvious that unless you know what thrive means to you, that phrase doesn't do you much good. And you came back to the place where I always begin, as a CEO, as a CEO of a public company, as an entrepreneur, whatever. Sometimes I'm asked some version of the question, what's the secret to success? Something that means
Something
that.
to that effect.
And my response always goes back to one place. And I think a lot of my listeners know it's all rooted in self-awareness. And what thrive means for you. You kind of described it a little bit, the things that really make you happy, motivate you, and you've accepted that you just need enough to be able to do those things, and you can be happy. And I support the idea that you can't be happy until you identify what makes you happy. And if you're not careful, you will confuse what the world wants for you, what others think you should have or do, for what really motivates you. And so on my own version of, how did you find your purpose, Shawn? How did, you described for us how you kind of stumbled your way onto yours, and you looked for it, and you went through a process a little bit to find that. I'll share with you, I think, a useful story in my own life on how I identified my purpose. And because I got thinking, because I think a lot of people don't really know how to get there. Okay, what are you going to think really hard? You're going to go to the mountain, you're going to pray about it. And in my case, what I did is I just asked myself, when am I the happiest? When do I just feel awesome? And I think anyone could ask themselves that question. And one of the first things that came to mind is like, I love being on the boat. I love wakeboarding. Sounds whatever, but I just love being out there with my friends on the boat. And I got thinking, do I really love wakeboarding? Like, I've never got that good. I can't do that many tricks. Didn't compete, didn't win any awards. No, it's not that I love wakeboarding. What do I love about it? What's happening in those moments? The music's going, the air is nice. I've got my close friends with me. I think I just like that environment. And I kept going deeper and deeper. And I thought about my own behavior and how weird I am about it. Like, if you get out to Southern Utah, Benjamin, I'll take you out on the boat. Yeah, and I promise, let's do it anytime. Come to Southern Utah. It's like the funnest place. You can do all the things. But as I'm picking you up from the dock, because we've dropped the boat in the water at the lake, I always have to have the music already going, the board's already in the rack, the drink's already in the cooler. I can't possibly make you do that stuff. You're right. Because I just want you to be able to step on and be in my world. Like, it's just, let's go. And I realized it's not wakeboarding or boating or any of that that really motivates me. It's being able to create environments that influence people for good. And I can do that in many different realms. And now I get to do that with 2,000 employees. There's nothing I love more than our manager fest, where everyone comes once a year and we have these big training sessions, parties. I mean, it is so fun for me. And I think a lot of other people. And my point is, in my own family with my kids, at Lovesac with my company, on the boat if you want, I get to participate in creating these environments that just make people happy and feel good. And that, for me, is a life well
Mm,
lived. I've identified, right, through
mm,
that process what's made me happy. That's how I got there. And I share that with everyone because, as you described, I think it can be hard sometimes for people to even know what really makes them happy. And they confuse things like making art makes me happy. Going wakeboarding makes me happy. Like, you got to dig just 2 levels deeper to really understand your motivations underneath it. And if you do, then you can write it down and create some mantra and live by it.
for
And
sure.
it will be shocking to you.
Yeah, it's like the Toyota five whys, right?
That's
That's
right.
basically it. Ask why and just keep going. Like it's uncomfortable, it's weird. Just keep going deeper,
Go
and
deep
something
enough
else.
until you get past the surface answers. And that's the best advice I can give you. And that's honestly the impetus for today's topic. Try everything. Like until I, have tried so many things, am I able to see the patterns in not just wakeboarding, right? But
But in
even in the way I approach dirt biking. Like we go ride the Baja, we race the Baja 1000. I'm not trying to win the Baja 1000. I started dirt biking in my 40s. I'm terrible. I mean, compared to kids who've been racing a motocross since they were 4 years old. But we ride it together. We're the only team in the whole race where 2 bikes are riding side by side because we sit there and chat with each other on our
you guys
wireless
are
devices. And it's fun it's not fun for everyone. Other teams look at us like we're crazy. Like, what, you guys will never win that. Like, we're not trying to win. This is what we're trying to do. And I found a group of people, and that's what makes me happy. And because I'm not confusing, I really want to ride dirt bikes fast, with what really motivates me and makes me happy, I feel very fulfilled. And there's just another example. So I don't know what comes to, as you've now aligned to your purpose, Benjamin, and understand your why and all that. How has it paid off for you?
I mean, since taking that sort of like little break and thinking about life and thinking about what's enough and what I need in order to thrive, and I had basically the most successful year and a half of my
Wow.
present career. I think I was like, and wasn't doing anything differently. I was doing
Wow.
exactly the same thing. I'm still creating the exact same thing, but
Hold on. Not
I think
just success in that you feel fulfilled, but if I'm hearing you right, even maybe
financially, I had more
financially.
projects. I was so busy. Yeah, I was
Wow.
so busy, and I think it's really because I just got out of my own way. That's
Mm,
really the best way to describe it. It's like we spend so much time wondering whether or not we make the right decisions, like second guessing ourselves or beating ourselves up when something's not going on, or being extremely anxious about something and harping on it. And there's like this threshold where like more work doesn't actually produce better results, right? Like you can invest all this time and anxiety into something and it doesn't really go anywhere. And I think that's kind of what I was doing. I would just beat myself up over something, and I would not have enough boundaries in place to ensure
wow.
that I was feeling happy and fulfilled. And so, with that, then you start, now you feel like, okay, I'm actually doing okay. I'm going to rest more. Now you're more rested. You show up better. You have more expansiveness for serendipity to happen. And suddenly you're saying yes to more things and no to the things that really don't matter to you, or that you're not saying yes to because you're like, oh, well, I got to go to this networking thing just in case it might do something. But no, you just be like, nah, it's the wrong vibe. It's not my people. And you can just move
Totally.
on. And so I think like I just got out of my own way. Things got really interesting. And with that, I just started like trying more things. I think like one of the big experiments of this year was fundraising.
Hmm.
So most of my projects in my past were commissions or collaborations with corporations where I would come up with an idea and then they would pay for it. But this time around, I was just like, you know what? It's kind of hard. Like, a lot of my work is anti-capitalist in nature, and so finding companies that are like down for that is really hard. Um, and
I
so
don't
I was
know.
like,
Lovesac has its anti-capitalist tendencies. We'll talk.
well, hey, I'm totally happy to chat with you. I'm happy to chat with anyone, really. But like, it was just so fun because it was just trying to get away from this like waiting for permission to do things. Because my projects have gotten bigger, which means I need funding, I need money in order to create a lot of these bigger projects. And so it's like, how do I get from a place of waiting for permission for a company to say, okay, that concept's cool, let's do it, to saying, I have a concept, I have an opportunity, I'm going to do it. Do you want to be part of it? It's like a very subtle power dynamic shift that was like supremely helpful for a number of reasons. Um, First, I had to figure out how to believe in my own ideas enough
Hmm.
that I felt comfortable asking other people for money.
Wow.
And I think as an artist, where you can't measure the impact, like the KPIs are are not really there. They're not the same. Like I can't tell you how
Yeah.
many people I've fed with my work or how many clients I have, like how many dollars I've earned. Like that's just not the metric. And so I need to come up with a story in my own head. I need to convince myself that this thing needs to exist in the world. And then from there, I now build that story and then I sell it to other people. And then you realize that actually you don't need to get thousands of people to believe in you. You just need a couple wealthy people, people that are interested in what you do that want to kind of play in your ball game. And so, yeah, that's been the latest thing. And now I'm like, oh, there's something here. Like people will
Cool.
spend money on things that are cool and unique and different. And if I can sort of help them find access to really cool, unique, interesting opportunities to be part of a global conversation, then this is my current hypothesis. I don't know if it's going to work. It only worked once right now, so I have one data point. Um, but I have like three upcoming UN conferences that I'm working right now to get access to. There's
Wow.
like the United Nations Ocean Conference in Nice, where they're supposed to ratify the High Seas Treaty. Right now, they have 16 signatures. They need 60 for countries to come on board to basically talk about how they're going to be protecting the oceans in places where there are no national boundaries. So, what happens
Hmm.
to those resources? How can they be managed? And so I'm trying to, leverage UN contacts to get in touch with a French delegation to figure out like, can I swindle my way? Because when you're an artist, like, you can talk to anyone. You can
Yeah.
sit at the table of kings and peasants. No one has their guards up. Everyone's kind of confused about what you're doing. So
Yeah.
I just weave my way through, try to get access to something. Can I get something for the UN Ocean Conference? Can I get something for Belém? The climate conference of this year is going to be in Brazil,
Hmm.
right? It's the first time it's going to be so close to the rainforests, and there'll be all these indigenous, a huge indigenous presence that's going to be there. There's going to be over 80,000 people that are coming through. I had a conversation with the Secretary of Culture of Brazil, and she's super down. And so it's like I get the first pieces of the puzzle, and can we build something that's right at the gate, at the entranceway between the blue zone where only the delegates are allowed and the green zone where everyone else is allowed? Can we create something there that was symbolic? And so if I can get the permission and I say, hey, we're going to have 80,000 people, we're going to have press from 195 countries. Would you like to sponsor a part of this? Would you like to come on board as a producer? Like, it feels compelling, right? So I don't know. This is where I'm at right now because I'm realizing that it's giving me a lot more freedom to dream. Whether or not it works almost doesn't matter because ideas are compostable. If you take these ideas and you compost them into new things, even if they don't work, you then rehash it, compost it. The relationships that you build along the way are still useful for something else.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's something really beautiful about that new cycle and something that I'm leaning into and trying and talking to everyone about. Um, and I think one last point on this: when you try things and you don't know how to do them, um, not being scared to talk about not knowing how to do them with everyone is actually super beneficial because everyone knows someone that knows something on the journey of the whatever experimental idea that you have. And suddenly you're learning. And when you ask people for help, you're actually creating a bridge to build a relationship together.
Yes.
Right? Like there's nothing more annoying than meeting someone who just doesn't need anything from you. Cause then you're just like, okay, well, I guess we have nothing to talk about. But if I said like, oh no, like there's just one problem that I just can't quite put my finger on. And I don't know, do you have any ideas? Like maybe
Yes.
or if you ever stumble across something, send it to me. There's now an invitation to connect, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing that we forget about is like we want to create as many bridges for human connection as possible. And from there, you can have amazing things that can grow from it.
To me, that's an extension, of course, of this idea. Try everything on verbally. I have
Yes,
this other
that's
Shawnism
true.
in the book, talk big, work small. And I unpack the idea that, there's so many things that aren't even real that I'll throw out there. They're just ideas I've had. And just in people's reactions, you'll either make a connection to your point that you didn't expect and something may advance, or you'll get the vibe that, it's kind of maybe not my best idea. But just by trying it on verbally, it can be insanely valuable. One of the big takeaways from our conversation, just a few connections as we wrap up that I made is, both you and I got started by just doing stuff. And we didn't understand our purpose. We didn't understand our motivations. We didn't understand ourselves. And it may have even been years, in my case anyway. And it sounds like yours, before we were even clear on what our purpose and motivations were. And by the way, I don't think it would have been possible to form those conclusions without having tried and done a bunch of stuff along the way. So you could be introspective and observe and get to that self-aware place. And so for anyone listening that, is worried because you may be, I don't know, at some age and you haven't identified your purpose or your why, or you haven't, somehow connected the dots. I went a long, long time before I came to some of these conclusions, as it sounds like you did too. And you did great work along the way, Benjamin, as I think I did too. And so you don't need to feel overwhelmed by that. But if you do put yourself through the process of discovering that, it, as you just described, it frees up so much headspace time, because now you don't have to do that again. You write it down, you turn it into a mantra, and you go live it. And now you have all that time, energy, headspace for living and doing and building. And it's amazing where it can lead. And so thanks so much for unpacking this with me, Benjamin. Anything else you want to throw in there before we tie it
Well, I
off?
haven't read this. I haven't read this book yet, but one of my friends recommended it. It's by Lynn Twist, and
Oh,
it's
yeah,
called Living a Committed Life. And
totally.
apparently, the thesis of this book is like for those who are struggling to find purpose, just go do something difficult that you care about. And
Mhm.
in pursuing the difficult, meaningful thing, you'll discover how you fit into it, like what your purpose is. And I think that when I look at how I got started, so I was doing all this like crazy fantasy stuff, right? And going from fantasy to impact is not a clear path. Like impact is supposed to be like sad documentaries and stuff, not fantastical adventures. And so I had to just say, well, I want my life to maintain both the fantasy and the magic and the travel and the adventure and the cool shit and that I like to do, and I need it to have impact too. And so how am I going to make that possible? So I just like I took a year off. I said no to every single paid project that didn't have any impact, and just experimented and tried and eventually stumbled across something that seems to have worked for now. Um, and so it's like I don't know if we ever like stop trying. I don't know if we ever stop figuring like you don't get to figure it out. You just get to keep doing it. Like the reward is to be able to continue trying and continue experimenting. And I hope that everyone gets a chance to experience what that feels like at some point in their life because I don't know about you, Sean, but I think it's a really beautiful place to find yourself in when you're able to be the hero of your own story. Um,
It is the
so
best
yeah.
place. Thank you, Benjamin. Where can people find you? How do we stay in touch?
Yeah, I mean, if you type Von Wong, VonWong, on Google, Instagram, Facebook, whatever you use, you can find photos, videos, blog posts, writings, everything about me. Yeah, and if you happen to be ever passing through New York City, you should totally reach out. VonWong.info is how there's like a Google form that you can fill out, and I have like hundreds of people that have filled out this form so that anytime I'm in a different city and they happen to be there, I can just reach out and say hello.
Cool.
So please fill that form out and maybe we can be friends.
Thank you. And remember, try everything. It just may save you a chunk off your own 25-year journey. Thank you, Benjamin.
Thank you.
My trip that I do once a year to take my friends away should not be the budget for your bike across America.
TikTok has become an aggregator for some of the dumbest human actions.
When I won that million, I was $2 million in debt, barely hanging on.